All right, hello everybody. My name is Lewis Cobble. I'm an apiary inspector with the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. So I help beekeepers understand best management practices. I also look out for disease, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. I cover 21 counties in Western North Carolina. There are 6 apiary inspectors across the state, and each has their own region. And this is my region, so essentially from Canes Mountain all the way up to Boone, and then all the way out, even past Murphy up there to that Georgia-Tennessee border. So I cover a lot of ground. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about, briefly about doing an inspection, the sort of things we're looking for when we do an inspection, or what you as a beekeeper need to be looking for as you're doing an inspection. Talk a little bit about American foul brood, because that's why apiary inspectors exist. It's why we have jobs. That's why that position became a thing 100 years ago. American foul brood was really ravaging the industry. Fortunately, today, not too much. We're also going to talk about, we're going to spend a lot of time on Varroa, the history, biology, thresholds and monitoring, integrated pest management, chemical controls, and at the end, I'm going to give you a lot of resources where you can study more. So we're just going to kind of scratch the surface a little bit tonight on all these little topics. And at the end, I'm going to give you resources where you can really dig deep. This is kind of a pest and disease talk, but I'm only going to talk about one disease and one pest, because these are things that the American foul brood, like I said, it's why apiary inspectors exist, and the Varroa is the thing that's going to give you the most problems for sure. I tell all beekeepers that they need to, if you're going to be a good beekeeper, you need to spend your time understanding these 3 things: Varroa, managing queen events, and feeding. So of all the problems that I see through the course of the bee season, at least minimum 90% of them fall into these 3 categories. So maybe even 95%. So if you can score an 80% on these 3 topics, you'll have more bees than you know what to do with. But if you're not paying attention to Varroa, if you're not looking out for and managing those queen events like swarming or supersedure, or if you're not handling feeding correctly, it's going to give you problems. So if you're looking to improve your beekeeping, these are very good places to spend your time. So as far as inspection, when you're doing a hive inspection, these are the things that I think you need to be paying attention to. Number 1 is evidence of the queen. So it's not necessary for us to actually see the queen, but it is important for us to see evidence of the queen. And that means all stages of brood. And in a little bit, as I'm talking about American foul brood, I'm going to show you pictures about what a colony or what a brood should look like: eggs, open brood, cap brood. And so we'll see some pictures of that. So we want to see evidence of the queen. That means all stages of brood. Are there queen cups or cells? So a cup might be something that the bees have built if they're thinking about replacing the queen or thinking about swarming, but it's empty. A queen cell, well, that's the cup, but now it's provisioned with an egg or a larva, or maybe it's even capped. So we're always looking out for those queen cups to let us know, is there a queen event? Are they thinking about swarming or superseding, or what's going on with the queen? So looking out for those queen cells or queen cups. Just seeing cups with nothing in them, probably don't need to worry too much, but it does need to kind of raise a flag, but don't panic. The second thing I'm looking for, are food stores sufficient? And I see a lot of beekeepers, especially new beekeepers, they're scared to death that their bees are going to starve to death, And sometimes they'll just feed, and that can create problems. Like that can push them into swarming, and we'll talk about that. So when should we feed? So I have some examples of when you should feed. If you have these things going on, definitely feed. If you don't have these things going on, lay off. If the colony is about to starve to death, definitely give them some food. We don't want them to starve to death. Do you need to stimulate the queen to lay? So sometimes later in the summer, when it's hot and dry as a dearth, that can really shut the queen down. And so if you need to pick her up a little bit, get her laying, usually a little sugar syrup will motivate her to get going. Some bees are more responsive to the environment than others. Some, even through a dearth, that queen will just keep laying, no response to the outside, what's going on outside. And that can be a problem too. But other queens are very sensitive to what's going on outside. If the nectar and pollen stops coming in, she'll just shut right down. So if you need her to pick up a little bit, throw them some food. If you need to draw comb, or if you need the bees to draw comb for you. So if you're starting with foundation, it takes a lot of energy to get that comb drawn. And so don't be afraid to feed to get that comb drawn. If you're a new beekeeper, your goal is to make sure you have at least 20 frames of drawn comb when you get to the fall. And the later we get in the season, the less motivated bees are to draw that comb. So try to get that comb drawn as early as possible. And if you need to feed, don't be afraid to feed to do that. If you need to build stores for the winter, so if we're going into September, as we're setting up for winter, we want a box full of bees below and a box full of honey above, right? So we want a box full of healthy bees below, box full of honey above. And so if you need to feed to get them to pack on that honey or syrup on top, go ahead and feed. If you're requeening, that can kind of ease that transition. If you've gotten rid of the old queen and you're trying to introduce a new queen, a lot of times feeding can make that transition go a little easier. So if you have these things going on, definitely you're welcome to feed. If you don't have these things going on, there's no, I can't think of other reasons where you would want to feed. And if you are feeding without these things going on, it's likely that you're going to stimulate that queen to lay, and then you've created a queen event, which that can be a problem too. So be judicious with the feeding. Don't let them starve, but don't push, too hard. Is there a suitable amount of space for the number of bees that you have? And so at this time of year, in the spring, especially in the earlier spring, these colonies are in explosive growth mode. And if they overwintered in a 5-frame nuke, they're going to need some extra room in probably February or March, or they're going to outgrow that space pretty quick. And so our colonies have gone through this explosive growth. And now, at least in my neighborhood, they're storing honey from the nectar from the flowers. In my neighborhood, today is May 5th. I've got tulip poplars and blackberries and clover all going. And there's a lot of nectar coming in, and they need room to put that. So I got to make sure that I'm giving them space. Later on in the summer, when everything shuts down, our colonies are big, but they're getting smaller. I will definitely need to condense those colonies as I'm setting up for winter. So think about what's going on in the environment, and is a colony growing or shrinking, and think about how much space this colony is going to need in 1 or 2 brood cycles from today. Right, so anticipate what this colony needs to look like in 3 to 6 weeks and start heading that way. If it needs to get bigger, give them more space. If they need to get smaller, you can start thinking about taking space away. So making sure they have the right amount of room. If there's not enough room, they're liable to get crowded and swarm. If they have too much room, that gives some of our opportunistic pests a leg up. Small hive beetles, wax moths. The bees are very good at policing those critters, but if they have too much real estate to police, that can get you can get in trouble there. So make sure you have the right amount of space. Sometimes I'll see folks that have a weak colony, 5 frames of bees, but they've got 20 frames, and that can be a problem. That's an invitation to for hive beetles and wax moths to do some damage. So I think right amount of space is important. So think about that during your inspections. Does the brood look healthy? We're going to look at pictures of what the brood should look like, and we'll spend a little bit of time talking about what things should look like and what things look like when it's going bad. So do you have all stages of brood, and is it healthy? Is there pest pressure? So mostly I'm talking about Varroa mites here, but you may also see hive beetle or wax moth in weak colonies. So I think of both of those, wax moth and hive beetles, as opportunistic pests. And if I see those in the colony, that's a kind of a canary in the coal mine to me that says, hey, something's off balance here. There's something, they've got too much space, they're not queen right. And seeing those pests is a red flag for me to figure out what's going on. I don't, in my colonies, I don't use any hive beetle traps or anything like that. Adult hive beetles they can't really do any damage unless they're able to lay eggs. And as long as I keep that colony healthy and populous, the bees will do a good job of handling those critters. So, but you're always looking for that pest pressure. And again, Varroa mites is a thing that's really going to get you in trouble. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that here in a little bit. All right. So that's kind of the quick and dirty inspection kind of check sheet, what we're looking for. And I'm sure we can I'm sure we'll have other questions about that in the live session. So as we're going through the presentation today, make notes, questions, and I'll do my best to answer those. All right, so this is a picture of eggs. So this is what eggs look like. And we're going to watch them kind of transform into larvae. We'll see the cat brood. We're going to see them grow at this amazing rate. And so if we see eggs, so we talked about seeing all stages of brood and how that relates to seeing evidence of the queen. If I see eggs, that means I've had a queen in the last 3 days. So it's very likely that she's still in the house. Not a guarantee, but it's very likely that she's still here. So that's good. Now we see here we have an egg. Here we have a 1 or less day old larva swimming in a little bit of jelly. And we're going to watch these guys grow at an amazing clip over the next 4 or 5 days. So this would indicate that we had a queen 4 days ago. So queen laid an egg in this cell 4 days ago. And we're going to watch these things grow. So this is 4 days after the queen laid an egg. 5 or 6 days after the queen laid an egg. 7 days after the queen laid an egg. And 8 to 9 days. So these larvae are capped over on the 9th day. So you'll see these have already been capped over. And I'm sure if we came back to this frame in the next 12 hours, these would also be capped over. So seeing that, this is, and I guess the thing I want you to think about or to notice about these larvae is that they are glistening, pearly white, healthy, glistening, pearly white. And so if we see something other than that, something besides glistening, pearly white, that's a red flag that something weird is going on. We need to look it up. To look into it, right? So if we put all this together, this is what a frame. This is a picture of a frame from an overwintered colony that was building up in the late winter, early spring. And so we see a cap brood here, and we see some older open brood here on the edges. And if we could look closer, I'm sure we'd see eggs out here on the outside edge. We might see eggs here where adults have emerged and the queen's gone back to relay in those empty cells. This is really a beautiful example of a colony that's in that explosive growth mode in late winter, early spring. So we see this, I believe this is red maple pollen on the edge of the brood nest. And then just outside of that, we have honey up in the corners. And this is a beautiful frame. Bee season is just getting rolling here. This is what things should look like. And these are examples of what things should not look like, right? So, and these are all photos of American foul brood. So this is a contagious disease. It forms spores that last a very long time. And it's in 100 years ago, it was really ravaging the bee industry, and that's why we have bee inspectors today. And so let's talk about things to look out for that might indicate that we have a problem. The first thing is, of course, a poor brood pattern. So that last frame we looked at, we had lots of nice capped brood, very pretty pattern. And we look at this, and the pattern is very spotty. Clearly, there's something going wrong. So we had a poor brood pattern. The next thing we notice is we see sunken cappings. So remember that last, let's go back and look at this frame. We have nice, smooth, capped brood, beautiful. And with the American foul brood, we see sunken cappings and pierced cappings. So the cappings have little holes in them. That's not good. You can see how these are sunken here and pierced. And so those are also kind of tip-offs. We might have a problem. Poor brood pattern, sunken cappings, pierced cappings. If we were to open one of those pierced cappings with a stick, we're going to find this kind of coffee brown, gooey mess on the inside. And this is a kind of a decomposing pupa. Remember that we talked about how that brood should be nice and pearly white. And we see here this coffee brown goo, right? So that's a big red flag that something's not going the way it's supposed to. If we put our stick in here and stir this around a little bit, and then we pull our stick out, this American foul brood, this goo, we call it ropes out. So it sticks to the stick and to the frame, and you have this kind of mucousy goo that will rope out about an inch or so. And so it's very mucousy and sticky, and that's a very good telltale sign that we've got some problems. And it is called foul brood because it has a foul odor. Now, there will be other bad odors, some good odors, and some other bad odors that emanate from your colony. It doesn't mean you have a problem. This is a kind of a very specific odor that's kind of hard to describe. It's not putrid, and it's not stale gym sock. But if your gym sock died, it probably smell like this. I don't know. Once you've smelled it, it'll stick in your brain. You will totally recognize it the next time you smell it. It's very unique. And some have a stronger smell than others. So just the smell is not enough to get a good diagnosis. You'll want to kind of add up all these different things. So what do we talk about? Poor brood pattern, pierced cappings, sunken cappings, coffee brown larvae under those cappings. They rope out and might have a bad odor. So once this ooey gooey stuff dries down, it forms spores, very tough spores that lasts essentially forever in this dormant state. And so if you have a colony that has succumbed to American foul brood, and you pack up that equipment and put it in the barn um, for 20 or 30 years, if someone comes by and say, oh, here's some free equipment, I'm going to go install some bees in this equipment. When they do, those spores will germinate, and that colony will break down with American foul brood. So this is a very serious disease. The other thing is, if there's a colony that's falling apart from American foul brood, neighboring colonies will come and rob the honey from that colony, and they can pick up those spores from there and spread it to other bees in your apiary, or to other bees, other apiaries in your neighborhood. So it's really important to keep an eye out for this. And if you have any questions, definitely call your apiary inspector. That's why we're here. So do not be afraid to call your apiary inspector, and we're happy to help deal with this. There's not really any treatment for the disease. We are going to destroy the colony. We'll dig a pit and throw the frames in and burn to get rid of it. We can, in North Carolina, we can sterilize your woodenware, and so we can save your woodenware, no problem. There's a small fee for that. We can do a colony for about $10 or less. And the other thing is, if you have picked up used beekeeping equipment, and we're not sure what the history of it is, we don't know if it's been exposed to American foul brood or not, we can sterilize that equipment and take that issue off the table. So we don't know what the history of it was. Well, let's just clean it up so we know that we're not going to have a problem. I'm happy to inspect equipment. I can look at, if you have drawn comb, I can look for indications of American foul brood on drawn comb, but I'm not going to be able to tell much from woodenware. So we might just go ahead and sterilize the woodenware. But that's certainly a kind of a unique thing that North Carolina does for our beekeepers. Not many states that do that. All right, so that's American foul brood. And so definitely write down those questions, and I'll do my best to answer those in the live session. All right, let's see what's next. All right, so we talked about what things should look like. In here we see one egg per cell, one egg, one egg, one egg, one egg, one egg, one egg. That's what things should look like. And how about this? We've got multiple eggs per cell. So this is not necessarily a disease, but it is a dysfunction that you are likely to run into during your first 1 to 3 years of beekeeping. And so this is called a laying worker situation. So if a colony goes or becomes hopelessly queenless, and they're not able to make a queen, the worker's ovaries will develop, and they will start to lay eggs. And they are not good at getting down and putting one egg in the middle of the cell. And we'll see eggs, off to the side, eggs sitting on the edge, on the wall of the cell, multiple eggs per cell. And this colony is kind of swirling the drain. They are hopelessly queenless. These eggs they're not fertilized eggs. They can only produce drones. It's a colony's last ditch effort to get their genes out into the world by producing drones. But this colony is swirling the drain. And so it's important to recognize when this is happening and understand what to do. So do not, if you have a laying worker situation, do not go out and purchase a mated queen and try to introduce it, because this colony thinks that they have a queen. So they're not going to accept that mated queen that you've purchased. They're not going to accept it. They're going to reject it. So you've wasted your money. The thing I like to do with a laying worker colony is unite it with a strong queen rank colony. So I'll take the top off of a good strong queen rank colony, put some newspaper across the top bars, cut a few slits in it, and then set that laying worker colony right on the top. and the brood pheromone from that strong laying worker colony, or that strong queen right colony, will shut down those laying workers, and the colonies will unite. That the paper acts as a buffer during this process, and I can come back in 7 days and condense the colony, or split with the mated queen at that point, or whatever. But definitely, when I talked earlier about the 3 things that are going to get you Varroa mites, queen events, and feeding, this is an example of a queen event gone bad, right? So understanding when that queen event has gone bad, and when to take action, and when you need to sit on your hands. So this is definitely something that you're going to, as a beekeeper, you're definitely going to see this in your first 3 years. I promise you. It really helps to have a mentor that can help you navigate these waters, right? All right, so now we get to the fun part. This is so you, in your first 1 to 3 years, you're going to see land workers. I'm pretty sure your first year and every year after that, you're going to deal with this critter. It's going to be the biggest, it's going to be your biggest problem. And so we're going to spend a lot of time on this joker. It's called the Varroa mite. This is an electron microscope photograph of a mite here, and this is the bee here. So it doesn't really give you much context. This is a mite on my thumbnail, so that gives you a little more context. And this is a mite on the back of a bee. This is not really where the mite likes to hang out on the bee. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And but that does give you better context. And hang on a second, I'll be right back. All right, this is my friend Vera, the Varroa mite. And so she scaled up. If bees were human size, this is how big a mite would be on a person. So you can imagine that if you came home and you had 1 or 2 of these attached to you, that your family might have some questions and some concerns, as they should. So it's, while it is easy for a beekeeper to overlook these things, it's not going to go good if you do. It's really important to pay attention. This is a little video that our technician in Raleigh took, and it's this is a drone. This is the comb on a frame. This is a drone trying to emerge, and this drone has been raised in a colony infested with mites, and this is its day to emerge as an adult. And let's see what's going on here. So we can see this mite on the head of the bee. There's a mite here. There's a mite here. We're going to see other mites. Oh, here comes somebody up around the bend here. I believe they're coming around here. Here comes somebody up from the south. And you can imagine that if you're a bee and you're developing in here and you've been parasitized by these mites that are transmitting viruses, that could very negatively impact you and your colony. So this is kind of that blood on the tracks driver ed film, that to try to spook you into wearing your safety belt. This is the Varroa mite version of that driver's ed film, trying to spook you into monitoring and taking care of your mite issue. So, all right. So where do these mites come from? In the blue here, we have kind of the native range of our Western honeybee, the one that we keep. Notice that it's not native to the New World. We brought it with us, but this is its native range. And in the red, we have the native range of a closely related cousin, the Eastern honeybee. And this is their native range. And about 100 years ago, we started moving things back and forth through this range. The Trans-Siberian Railway runs through here, and we were able to move things back and forth through these ranges, and including honeybees. And this mite hopped. So the mite is native to this bee, the eastern honeybee. But as we're moving stuff back and forth, that mite was able to hop species to the western honeybee. Now, the eastern honeybee and the Varroa mite have had this very long history together. They have a stable host-parasite relationship. They get along pretty well together. If this mite invades a worker cell, that developing worker pretty much dies immediately. And so that mite's not able to reproduce. That's not how it works in the European bee. And so there are other, this eastern honeybee has other defenses so it gets along pretty well with the mite. But this mite is not at all natural on our western honeybee. And that's the thing to think about. There's nothing natural about this mite on our bee. And so we found them on the western honeybee in Russia in the early 50s, in Pakistan in 55, in Japan in 58. They made it to Paraguay in 71, Germany in 77. We found them in the United States in Wisconsin in 1987, and in North Carolina in 1990. And so if you've heard stories of beekeeping in North Carolina, if you had a family member that was a beekeeper in the 80s, they will tell a very different story about beekeeping pre-Varroa. It was a much different adventure, much easier to keep bees alive before Varroa. And so we have kind of these two, a pre-Varroa era, and we're in that post-Varroa era where we really have to pay attention. How are mites so good at getting around, right? So they're basically all over the world. They're not in Australia and a few other isolated islands, but they're pretty much everywhere now. How are they so good at getting around? Natural drift. So the mites live on adult bees, and bees drift from here to there, from colony to colony, and so the mites are able to drift as well. Robbing, swarming, absconding, and I guess the biggest one is human-aided exchange of bees and brood. And so that just means when you purchase bees, you also purchase mites. The question is how many came with your package or your nuke. It's not a question of did they come, it's just a matter of how many, right? So this is a good example. This is a picture from this is a hive inspection. These folks had just installed 2 packages about 2 weeks before we took this picture, and we were just checking to see if the queens had been released. Were they laying? Were they drawing comb? Was everything going good? And we found this. We found some cat drone brood. So we said, "Oh, let's open this and see if we see any mites. See what our mite load might be here." And this is on one drone pupa. We found 4 Varroa mites in this package of bees. So please do not think that just because you have a new package or a new nuke of bees this season that you don't need to worry about mites. That's not the case. You may or may not have a lot of mites, but you're gonna have to monitor to find out. We're gonna talk about that. This is kind of the life cycle of the mites. So I guess the other thing to remember is mites only live on honeybees. They don't live anywhere else. So if your colony dies from mites, there is some good news. The bad news is your colonies, your bees are dead. The good news is the mites are also dead. So they don't live in the grass. They don't live on on wasp or bumblebees. They don't live on cantaloupes or anywhere else, only on honeybees. So if that colony is succumbs to Varroa mites, those mites are also die in that process. So let's look at kind of the life cycle of the mite. So this there's an egg. This mite is riding around on nurse bees in the colony, and it's looking for older open brood to hop into. It wants to hop into a cell just before it gets capped over. So this is about day 8 here. And so this, we're going to call her the foundress, or the mother mite, hops in at about day 8 before it's capped over. If she hops in too early, nurse bees coming by to feed the larva will discover it and remove it. So it's important for her to sneak in as late as possible, and she's going to get up under that larva and hide from any nurse bees that might come by until it gets capped over. And now she's free to move around the cabin, right? So she can ease up here, open a feeding site on the prepupa. After 60 hours, she'll lay her first egg. Her first egg is here. That first one is a male. Every 30 hours after that, she'll lay another egg, and each subsequent egg is a female, right? So the first one is a male. Each one after that is a female. And that the male matures first, kind of hangs out waiting for his sister to mature, and he will mate with each sister as she matures. And all the while they are feeding on, so the mom and all her progeny are feeding on this developing bee. So they've opened wound sites, and they're able to suck the nutrition out of this developing bee. And that's, that's a problem. Any mature daughters, any daughters that are mature when this adult emerges will survive. So in worker brood, we expect mom and almost always one, sometimes 2 daughters to emerge. These are daughters that did not mature. Also, the male does not survive outside of the cell. So only the mom and any mature daughters will emerge with the adult bee. So in worker brood, we think, or it turns out that mom and about 1.5 daughters will come out. In drone brood, drone brood it matures for an extra 3 days. So there's more time for those daughters to emerge. And in drone brood, the mites have a reproductive advantage with mom, and on average 2.5 daughters coming out with the adult drone. So the mites definitely have a reproductive advantage in the drone brood, and they seem to understand that, they recognize that, and they have a preference for reproducing in drone brood. Now we can use that to our advantage, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Mites feed on the fat body of the bee. So underneath, kind of on the stomach of the bee, that fat body is like an organ underneath that exoskeleton, and it's in charge of growth and metamorphosis, pesticide detoxification, water loss, osmoregulation, immune function, temperature regulation, and metabolic activity, and probably some other stuff. And you can imagine if that organ has been compromised, that these functions are also compromised, and that's a big deal. Damage at the individual level from being parasitized as they're developing, significantly reduced weight, decreased flight performance, they start foraging earlier, decreased ability to learn, prolonged absence from the colony, lower rate of return to the colony, decreased ability to navigate. So these are all problematic. And it's really, so these mites are transmitting, amplifying, and activating honeybee viruses. And it's really these viruses that do most of the damage, or are responsible for most of the mortality in our colonies, especially over winter. And so we notice in this slide, we see a mite on a bee here, but the bees are looking pretty healthy, except we notice these 2 bees in the corner. Notice how their wings are crinkled and malformed. This is a an outward symptom of a virus infection. And this particular virus is called deformed wing virus. So I think that the scientists did a good job of naming this virus. These bees only last about 3 days, maybe. So the colony has invested a lot of energy into developing these bees, nursing them, but they're not going to be, these bees are not going to be of any use to the colony. It's a real problem. Deformed virus. So there are about 20, maybe 24 viruses that we know of in the honeybees, and certainly deformed wing virus and some paralysis viruses seem to be closely related to mites. So they're able to transmit, amplify, and activate these viruses. So a lot of these viruses don't have outward symptoms. So you may have a high virus load in your colony, but you can't see signs of the virus. And so our job as beekeepers is to make sure that we keep the mite numbers low so that we keep the virus levels low, and so that our bees can be healthy, especially when we're trying to get through the winter. It's the most important part. This is what a colony might look like if it's suffering from a high mite load and a high virus load. So we saw early in the presentation, we saw that really pretty frame of brood. We had, nice cat brood in the middle, pollen around the edges, honey above that. I think this frame is upside down because this is that pollen that would be on the top of the frame. So this frame is kind of upside down. So there's a little bit of pollen here. This would be the top. But notice we talked about things when we're talking about American foul brood, things that kind of tip us off that there's an issue. The first thing we talked about was a poor brood pattern. And this is kind of a textbook example of poor brood pattern. Like, it's not solid. There's something going on. And so that poor brood pattern is kind of our first red flag. It catches our eye, and then we start to look a little closer, and we see less than pearly white brood. It's not glistening, so this is dried down. This is chewed down. Less than pearly whites, melted. Definitely something going on. This could be not American foul brood, but there's another brood disease called European foul brood that looks very similar to this. So again, poor brood pattern, less than pearly white, melted brood, just terrible looking developing brood. There are mites sitting on that brood. That's a tip off that your mite load is too high. And we see mites in these empty cells. So if you're seeing mites on the brood like that or on your bees, you're way, way past the tipping point. There's probably no returning from that mess. So it's really important for you to be proactive and stay on top of your mite loads. And we're going to talk about that. So this is what things should look like. Glistening, pearly white brood, 1 egg per cell, and really good looking stuff. And then this is what it looks like when things are not going good at all. So, all right, so on this little graph, we have 3 different lines. The first line is the bee population. So just think about this blue line first. This is all we had to manage before mites. We, as beekeepers, this is basically the year. So January 1st to December 31st, we're managing explosive growth in the late winter and early spring. Right now, at least at my house, we are somewhere probably halfway up this curve. We're still growing. We're shooting for to maintain peak population so we can have maximum production, whatever we're managing for. So some people might be managing for maximum number, or they might be selling bees. So they want to manage, they want to have a lot of bees so they can sell bees. Other people might be managing for honey. We want a lot of bees so we can make a lot of honey, whatever you're managing for. And then through the peak of the season, and then they kind of get smaller and smaller in the fall and into winter. And so we put them to bed for winter and then just do that again next year, right? That's before Varroa. It's pretty easy. The orange line is our Varroa population. So if we add that to the mix, it gets a little more complicated. It gets a lot more complicated because we really have to spend a lot of time monitoring and managing not just the bee population, but the bee population as well as the mite population. And I'm not sure who drew this graph, but I will tell you that if your mite population outpaces your bee population, there is zero chance that your bee population is going to drift off nice and easy, and then you'll get to do it again next year. If your mite population outpaces your bee population, your colony is going to die, no doubt about it. And you're going to have to, if you want to manage this line again next year, you're going to have to buy more bees. So our goal is to keep this orange line tamped down as low as possible. And we're going to talk about how to determine where that line is and how to keep them tamped down. That's what this is all about. The red line is our virus level. So notice that the Varroa population kind of follows our bee population. So the mites are reproducing in the developing bees. As we're making more bees, we're also making more mites. Same thing with the virus. The virus is amplified by the mites, and so that virus line is going to kind of follow the mite line, when that mite line follows the bee line. And even if we knock our mites down in the fall, if our mite level got too high, our virus level has gotten too high, and our bees are sick. And even getting rid of the mites, that doesn't get rid of the virus. It only gets rid of the mites. But if they're causing but they have caused the virus. And so it's important to keep the mite level low, keep the virus level low if we're interested in having healthy bees. It can be kind of complicated. But managing that mite number, that is the most important part of beekeeping if you're interested in healthy bees by far. So we have this picture here, and in this picture there are about 50 bees. So how many mites do you think we might have on these 50 bees? So we see 50 bees. How many mites do you think might be here? Well, it's impossible to tell. We see there's one mite here on the back of the bee. Again, that's not where mites really like to hang out. So it's just looking at a frame of bees is not sufficient to tell us what our mite load is. So these mites like to hang out underneath the bee. And so we could have more than 50 mites in this picture with the 50 bees. We don't know. This is really where the mites like to hang out. So this is underneath the bee. So if we picked a bee up by her wings and flipped her over, that's what we're looking at here. And so you can see how these mites have tucked up under these segments, and just under these segments, that's where that fat body that we talked about, that's where that organ is. And these mites are able to pierce the soft body parts up under that exoskeleton, and they can inject an enzyme that starts to digest that organ. And so they're really digesting it before they slurp it. So those enzymes are digesting that organ in the bee, and as well as transmitting amplifying viruses, and then they're working on that fat body. Big deal. It is a big deal. And so how do we tell what our mite load is? Well, we have this little pretty low budget, low tech stuff. It's called a sugar shake jar. And I think it's the most important tool in your beekeeping toolbox. It's essentially just a mason jar. I like a wide mouth because it's easier to get the bees in. Mason jar with the lid and ring top. You throw the lid away and you cut some number 8 hardware cloth to fit in the ring. And you'll see a lot of number 8 hardware cloth in beekeeping. The screen bottom boards, that's number 8 hardware cloth. Sometimes in feeders. And so you'll see most bee supply places will have number 8 hardware cloth. You just ask them to purchase a swatch of it, and you can make your own sugar shake jar. I'm sure you could also buy sugar shake jars at bee supply places. but very important tool. And so this is it in action. So our goal here is to get 300 bees into the jar. So 300 bees is our sample size. It turns out that 1/2 of a cup of bees is about 300 bees. So basically you're putting 1/2 of a cup of bees into that jar. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. I'll put you on some resources that can help you understand how this process works. But essentially 1/2 a cup of bees into the jar, a couple of tablespoons of regular 10x powdered sugar, nothing fancy, just off the shelf at the grocery store, 10x powdered sugar, and put that in through the top onto the bees, and that you let them kind of wallow in that for 2 minutes, and it heats up the bees and dislodges the mites. And then this is there's a lot of different ways to do this. This is a bucket lid, and there's a little bit of water in the bucket lid, and we're going to shake for 1 minute over that water. And as we shake, the mites fall through and the powdered sugar falls through, but the bees stay in the jar. So the powdered sugar comes through, dissolves on the surface of the water, and the mites are floating on the surface of the water. So it makes it very easy to count the mites. So we're able to count how many mites we could dislodge from our 300 bees in our sample. And this is a picture of that bucket lid, and all these little reddish brown ovals, these are the mites that came out of that sample. And in this sample, we had about 15 mites. We dislodged about 15 mites. And we like to describe our mite infestation as a percentage, or infestation rate as a percentage. So, and that's just mites per 100 bees. So if I had 15 mites on 300 bees, my infestation is just 15 divided by 3, or 5%. So 5% infestation in this sample. Now, is that a good number or a bad number? It's not a good number. Let's look at infestation. Well, what the thresholds are and where we want to stay, where we want to be below. And I'm going to, in our resources, I'm going to send you to this document. And so don't feel like you have to write this down. I'm going to put you onto all kinds of good resources where you can study up on this stuff. So the colony phase, it varies a little bit depending on the time of the year. So we're going to talk about, right now we're in population increase. And so this is spring into early summer, peak population, midsummer, population decrease, fall, and dormant without brood, middle of winter. And so these numbers change a little bit based on what's going on in the colony and how much capped brood we have. And here we have the acceptable level, and here we have the danger lookout level. And if you don't remember anything else from this talk, remember this: there is no room between things are okay and things are not okay, right? So here, at population increase, if we have less than 1% infestation, a mite infestation, we're okay for now. If we have more than 2 or 3%, we're in the problem zone, and there's just no wiggle room there. So it's really important to catch these things before they get out of control. I regularly see infestation rates 10, 15, 20%, and higher as we get towards the end of the summer. And those colonies are walking dead, right? So if you let your infestation rate go through the roof, you should expect your colony to die, right? These thresholds continue to go lower. This is the 2018 chart. In 2016, 5%, we could go, it was in the kind of the caution range, 3 to 5% at peak population. You'll notice now that we don't want to go anywhere above 3%. And I would say 2% would be a good place to stay below. And so if you're letting things go to 5 or 10%, you are asking for trouble, right? So you got to keep those numbers low. Remember, if the mites get too high, the viruses get too high, and then even if you knock the mites down, those viruses are still hives. I think about it as, let's say that my friend gave me the flu. Now, if I go and kill my friend, he's not going to give me the flu anymore, but killing him does not fix my flu problem. That thing has to work its course. I have to work it out. And so it's the same thing with the mites. Just getting rid of the mites does not get rid of the viruses. We do not have any treatments for the viruses. So it's critical that you keep the mite numbers low. High mite loads equals high virus loads equals dead bees, right? So I hope you're picking up what I'm cooking here. So very important to keep those mites under control. All right. This is a kind of a made up graph, but this is what the blue line is the mite infestation through the season. And you might start low in January and kind of build, and things kind of really get rocking there towards the fall. This is if you start January at a very low rate. If you start January here, then you can move this whole graph to the left, and things are going to get out of control much earlier. So it's important to keep your numbers low really all the time. This is a recipe for disaster, letting this thing go out of control. Economic threshold, very low at 3% or less. I would say 2% would be a safer bet. And so we also have this detection threshold, the number that you're able to see mites, you know, or whatever method you're using. And in this case, the detection threshold, whatever the beekeeper is using, is above the economic threshold. And that's not going to do anybody any good. If you can't see mites until they're at 6% and your threshold is 3%, that's a losing game. And I see so many beekeepers where their detection threshold is way up here. They don't notice that they have mites until they're seeing them on bees, or until the brood pattern has just gone all to heck, indicating a high virus load. And if your detection threshold is up here at the ceiling, it's no good. Like, it's too late. That's a dead colony walking. Your detection threshold has to be below the economic threshold. And so using that sugar shake, or we'll also talk, or our resources, they'll talk about an alcohol wash. Those are the best ways to have that low detection threshold that you need, right? So keep that in mind. If your detection threshold is up here, it's not gonna work for you. But so this blue line, this beekeeper has a good detection threshold. He's kind of been monitoring through the season, making sure things are in control, monitoring every 4 to 6 weeks. And looks like later on in the summer, he hit that economic threshold, that point where they needed to take some action, and took some action and brought that level back down. And this is a recipe for success in beekeeping. That other line that we saw where the mites just went out of control, that's the recipe for disaster. So that's not what you're shooting for. This is what you're shooting for, keeping the mite numbers below the economic threshold, using a good detection method, and staying on top of them. I think as a beekeeper, in my own colonies, I monitor every colony at least 6 times during the season. Here it is, May 5th. I've already monitored every colony twice this year. I started in late February, monitored again in late April. I'll monitor again in early to mid-June when I take that spring honey off. I'll monitor again in late July when I take summer honey off. And before I put my treatments on, I will monitor again in mid-September to make sure that my treatment was effective. And I'll monitor again in October to make sure that things are still in control. And if something's out of control in October, I'll have to take some action and re-monitor to make sure that what I did was effective. So please, please concentrate on your monitoring, practice it, get good at it, make it a part, make it a big part of your beekeeping. And because if you do, it will really pay dividends, right? I can't stress this enough. It's really, really important. So let's talk about things. So that's kind of the history, the biology, and thresholds, and how we monitor. So let's move on to the next section, and we're going to talk about 3 integrated pest management things that we can do to try to keep mites under control before we have to go to the chemical closet. And so integrated pest management, or IPM, or non-chemical methods. So the first one that seems to be popular is good genetics. So there are some bees that are better than others at dealing with mites. So they're good at grooming or whatever. And so you might hear people talking about Russian honeybees, or Varroa sensitive hygiene, or ankle biters, or Minnesota hygienic. And it seems like every 4 years there's a new super bee that's going to save the industry. They haven't, I would say they haven't come through yet, but there's no shortage of people out there selling them. But certainly good genetics can be a good tool in your toolbox. It cannot be the only thing in your toolbox. So if you do not let anyone sell you some super queen that's going to solve your problem, it's up to you to monitor and keep an eye on those mite loads. I can promise you, I have not seen any genetics that were so good that they would reliably control mites all the time. It's really important to do that monitoring. So, but having good genetics is a good base for your integrated pest management pyramid. Don't get me wrong, I'm all in favor of good genetics, but please don't think that they're the only thing you have to do. It's not true. So good genetics. The next thing is a little technique called brood trapping. So we talked earlier about how the mites seem to have a preference for drone brood, and we can use that to our advantage. This green frame it's a plastic frame, and it has embossed on it larger cells. And so the bees draw out these larger cells. And of course, when the queen sees that larger cell, she lays an unfertilized egg, or a drone egg, right? And so we can use that to our advantage. And so this is the frame, this is the brood nest, and this is looking from the top into that brood box. So the beekeeper has placed a couple of drone frames near the middle of the brood nest. So H just means honey or pollen stores. This is a frame of worker brood, so regular old foundation, regular size cells. So worker, drone, worker, worker, drone, worker, honey, honey. And so the bees draw this out, the queen lays drone eggs, the mites hop in, hey, it was a great place to reproduce. And then the bees cap it over, and then the beekeeper can remove that frame and removes the drones and any mites that might have gone in there to reproduce. So this is can be used. I guess the trick is, if you're not paying attention and all of this capped drone brood emerges, all the mites and all of the daughters also emerge, right? So you have to be on your game if you're going to play this, right? Because if you let all these bees emerge, all these drones, you have created a Varroa bomb instead of what you were shooting for, which is a Varroa vacuum, right? So you have to be very careful with this. The other thing is, this is really, drones are a luxury item for bees. They only produce drones when the bee economy is very good, right? So right now, there's lots of nectar and pollen coming in. They are raising drones. This is not going to play in October, or August, September, when it's hot and dry. They've shut down drone production. But if you wanted to try this in the spring, have at it. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Just look up drone trapping. I do it a little bit in my colonies. I can insert a foundationless frame into a colony that has other frames of regular foundation, and those bees will use that foundationless frame to draw all drone comb. And so once they draw it, lay it in or lay it out, gets capped over, I can pull it out. And the chickens love that drone brood. It's a real treat for them. There's a lot of different ways to do this. But, all right, so we talked about good genetics, drone trapping. The third thing we're going to talk about is making splits. So we talked about how the mites reproduce in the developing brood. And so if we put a kind of a speed bump in the production of brood, it also puts a little bump in mite reproduction. So this fellow, he started his morning. He came out here today. He had a strong queen right colony, lots of bees. And at the end of the day, he's going to have a smaller queen right colony. And he's going to have two other colonies that he's given them the things that they need to make a new queen themselves, right? So there's going to be about a 30-day break in that brood cycle as these colonies are developing new laying queens. And so it's going to put a little bump in the reproduction of the mites as well. Again, none of these things are a silver bullet. There aren't any silver bullets, whether it's non-chemical or chemical. Please keep that in mind. But these are kind of the three most popular kind of non-chemical ways. You can put anything in your integrated toolbox that you want. You'll see a lot of different methods out there, and definitely feel free to put any of those methods in your integrated pest management toolbox, as long as you're monitoring to see if they're working, right? So just because you read on the internet that it worked, that does not mean that it's going to work for you. It's really up to you to do that monitoring to see how it's going, right? All right, so let's talk about, now we're going to go to the chemical closet and see what's there if we need to move up that pyramid. So the first three that I'm going to talk about are synthetic miticides. The first two are not effective anymore, so I want you to just kind of scratch them off your list, right? So the first one we're going to talk about is called Apistan. It was our original miticide back in the 90s. It was very effective early on. The active ingredient is tofluvalinate. It's a pyrethroid, and it was basically these plastic strips that were impregnated with the active ingredient, and the strips would go down into the brood nest, and the mites and the bees would come into contact with that plastic strip, and it was harder on the mites than it was on the bees. And so it was very effective early on, but it didn't take very long for the mites to develop resistance to the product. And so it's not very effective anymore, right? So even though it's still registered, still sold, there are some mites that are susceptible to it, but it's likely that there are better options out there, right? So I would recommend that you not use Apistan. The next miticide that came after Apistan, it's called Checkmite. The active ingredient is Coumaphos. It's an organophosphate. Again, plastic impregnated strips that go into the brood nest. And kind of the same story here. It did a fine job when Apistan failed, but it didn't take long for mites to develop a resistance to it. And again, I would wave you off of Checkmite. So probably not as effective as it should be. The last of the synthetics, this one is called Apivar. Again, it's a plastic strip impregnated with the active ingredient. The active ingredient is amitraz. This has been around for a long time, and it's still doing a pretty darn good job. It's not perfect. I think we do have some colonies that have mites that are resistant to this product, but I think most of our colonies, most of our mites are susceptible. And so I've used it the last 2 years, and it's done a very good job for me. I have seen some colonies, some beekeepers that have used it, and it did not do a good job for them. So it is important to monitor before and after the treatment to make sure that you got where you want it to go. So I think this could be on your list of um, things that you might use. If you're, so not everybody's interested in using a synthetic herbicide. If synthetic is okay with you, this is one that I would recommend that you try. The other 7 or so that we're going to talk about are, I'm not going to call them natural or organic, but I will say that they're botanicals. They're made from plants or natural stuff. And so let's see what we have in that sort of stuff. The first one is called Apica Guard. It's a thymol-based product. And so thymol is just an extract from the thyme plant, THYME. And Apica Guard is a white gel. It comes in these tins that have a 50-gram dose in them. And you just kind of peel the top back and lay this dose on the top bars of the brood nest. You do need a little shim or a spacer to lift your top up. It's important. So the bees don't like this strong smell. It's kind of a minty smell. The bees don't like it, and they want to remove it from the colony. And as they're removing it from the colony, they're spreading it about, and it's harder on the mites than the bees, right? So it's available in these 50 milliliter or 50 gram, I can't remember if it's grams or milliliter, pre-dose tins. You can also buy a bulk tub. So you have to kind of squirt, they give you a syringe where you can squirt 50 milliliters onto a kind of a paper pad. That's cheaper if you buy the bigger bucket. The bucket will treat 30 colonies. So most people don't have 30 colonies. They want to use the smaller packs. But anyway, certainly an option. Apica Guard, thymol based. Our next product is called Apica Life Var. It's also a thymol based product, but it has 3 other essential oils as well. So it has thymol, menthol, camphor, and eucalyptol. So 4 different essential oils. It comes on this kind of a vermiculite wafer that you break it up into 4 pieces and put on the 4 corners of the brood nest. Again, it's just kind of a strong smelling, minty smell. The bees want to remove it from the nest, and it's harder on the mites than it's on the bees. The next one is called, the active ingredient is formic acid. There's 2 versions made by the same manufacturer. Mite Away Quick Strips is a 7-day treatment. Both of these are pads that are soaked in formic acid, and it's just sit on the top bars of the brood nest. Mite Away Quick Strips is a 7-day treatment. It purports to permeate the capped cells to kill mites underneath the capped brood. Same thing with Formic Pro, but it's a 14-day treatment. So the difference is this is a faster, harsher treatment. Formic Pro is stretched out. It's twice as long, but it's a little softer, right? So it's a little easier on the bees. I think both these versions are still available. Mite Away Quick Strips have been around the longest. Formic Pro has been around for a couple of years, I believe. But formic acid. Formic acid is a natural component of honey, certainly not in the concentrations that we're using to kill mites, but it is a natural component of honey. So that this formic acid is also an option. The next one is called Apabioxyl. It's a the active ingredient is oxalic acid, and there's 3 ways to apply this product. Demonstrated here. You can make a sugar syrup solution and dose it with the Apabioxyl, and you dribble it in between the seams of the frames onto the bees. So you're putting it onto the bees. The second way is a vaporizer. So basically you have this heat sink here. You put like a gram of these crystals into this heat sink. You stick it in the colony, and then you turn on the heat sink, and it vaporizes. Basically, produces this thick white smoke that covers the bees. And the third application method is you can spray it onto a package of bees to try to kill mites on adult bees before you install them. Dribble, vaporization, or spray. This, I would say, this apoboxyl only kills mites on adult bees. It doesn't hang around to catch stuff that's in the capped brood. All the other products that we talked about, they are in the colonies for typically 1 or 2 brood cycles. So it's hanging in there, catching stuff as it emerges from the capped brood, except for the formic acid that purports to kill mites under the capped brood. Apoboxyl is a good product if there's no capped brood in the colony. It's not going to touch anything under the capped brood. And at any time, about 70% of our mites are in the capped brood. So this is not an effective treatment when you have a lot of capped brood. It's very effective if you don't have any capped brood. Like I like to use this in December to clean up anything that I might have missed in September, and so I can start my year as clean as possible. Also, if you pick up a swarm before they have capped brood, you can kind of hit the reset button by giving them an apoboxyl treatment. Or that colony, that swarm that made the new queen, they're going to have this spot where they don't have any capped brood. That's another great opportunity to hit the reset button. Right, so it's a good tool when used appropriately. The last one is called Hop Guard 2. It's an extract from the hop plant, same thing that we brew beer from. So it's extract, and it's kind of soaked onto these cardboard strips that hang in the brood nest. So that's also an option. So those are our registered legal miticides, stuff that you can use in your colonies to work on the mites. I know it's complicated, and so I'm definitely going to put you on some resources that can help you dig a little deeper on all these different treatments, and certainly feel free to call me if you're not sure. So things to think about with the treatments. 1/3 of the time they work as planned. So you have a high mite load, you apply a treatment, then you have a low mite load. That's what we're looking for. And I think a lot of beekeepers think that just because we apply a treatment that it solved our problem, and that is not necessarily the case. Actually, only 1/3 of the time does it work out like that. So keep that in mind, that only 1/3 of the time treatments work as advertised. 1/3 of the time they work, but the mites spike. So you have a high mite load, you apply a treatment, you have a low mite load, but then again, only 2 or 4 weeks later, the mites have popped back up. And so I've definitely seen that in my own apiary, where the treatment did a good job, but then in no time, the mites are back. And that could be that the treatment didn't catch mites in the capped brood, didn't kill those mites. Or you can have infestation from outside. So especially in the fall, if you handle your mites, but you have a neighbor down the road who doesn't handle their mites, as their colonies are crashing, your bees are over there robbing those weak colonies, and they're picking up mites and bringing them back to your apiary. I definitely saw that in my own apiary last year. 1/3 of the time, the treatment just fails. So you have a high mite load, you apply a treatment, and then at the end of that treatment, you have an even higher mite load. So it didn't even touch the mites. And that happens 1/3 of the time as well. So it's really important to understand that there are not any silver bullets. And it's really important for you to monitor. Bottom line, you have to have an effective mite management plan. If you don't have a plan, you're setting up for failure. High mite loads equals high virus loads equals dead bees, period. So have an effective mite management plan. Can't stress it enough. It's got to be effective. It can't just be a plan. It's got to be an effective plan. And you got to implement it. So I've messed this up all three ways. I had a plan, but it wasn't effective. I got out there and did it, but it wasn't effective. Didn't work. Had a good plan on the table. It was an effective plan. I didn't get off my butt and go out there and do it. And that didn't work out either. So it's important that you have all these things, the whole package. You got to have a plan. It's got to be effective, and you got to do it. So if you can hit all those points, you'll be fine. Monitoring is not optional. Again, just because you have a Varroa resistant queen, that doesn't mean that your problems are solved. Just because you applied a treatment, that does not mean your problems are solved. You've got to monitor. You cannot make good decisions unless you have good information. And monitoring is how you get that good information. So it is really critical, really critical. Know your enemy. So know what you're dealing with. The Varroa mite. Understand biology and how it works. There are no silver bullets. Can't say that enough. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution. I've had good, very good luck dealing with mites over the last 2 seasons in my own apiary. That doesn't mean that my plan would transfer directly to you, right? You live in a different area. Your mites might be different. Your bees might be different. You may have different beekeeper neighbors. So what works at my house may or may not work for you. The other thing is, I'm willing to use synthetic miticides. Maybe you're not. So everyone has to kind of find that thing that works for them and with them. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution. You got to monitor. I can't stress that enough. All right. So now we're going to go to our resources. So we're kind of winding up here. We've covered a lot of ground tonight, but really, again, we've just scratched the surface. And these resources are the things that can really help you dig deep. All right. The first one is called the Honeybee Health Coalition. They have a great website. They have lots of information on the website. And the most important thing I think that they have is called Tools for Varroa Management, a guide to effective Varroa sampling and control. It's a free to download PDF, totally free. Just go there and get it. It's about 25 pages of great information, how to monitor, details on the different treatments, all the stuff we covered tonight, the thresholds, the viruses. This is the place to start as you're thinking about your Varroa management plan. It's a great resource and it's up to date. Remember, there are a lot of resources on the internet. Some of them are from 2006 or earlier, and they are not current, right? So if you're reading a document and you notice it's from 2006, it's of no use, right? Things are very different now, 14 years later, right? So stay with the up-to-date stuff. This document gets updated quarterly, right? So it's always good stuff. They have another document called, or it's really a kind of a little, kind of like an app. And it's called the Varroa Management Decision Tool. You just hit the Get Started button. It'll ask you 5 questions. Are you above the threshold? Do you have honey supers on? Are you willing to use synthetics? Is the population high, low, or middle? And how much cat brood do you have? And it'll offer you different suggestions, right? And it'll link you out to those suggestions so you can study more about them. So the goal is to help you understand the different treatment options and what fits where, right? They also have a little document called Best Management Practices for Hive Health, a guide for beekeepers. It's kind of like a little bee school in a box. It's about an 80-page document. It covers a lot of good ground. So it's definitely worth looking at. Another great resource is called, just go to keepbeesalive.org. It's the Michigan Pollinator Initiative, and they have great resources. I think the page has been updated a little bit. Just go to keepbeesalive.org. It'll take you right to Michigan Pollinator Initiative. And they have some great videos. Why did my bees die? Understanding Varroa risk, making a plan for Varroa mite. And lots of links to other great resources including the Honeybee Health Coalition. So if you can't find the Honeybee Health Coalition, go to keepbeesalive.org and they will take you right there. The last, or another one is called A Field Guide to Honeybees and Their Maladies. This is a great little field guide. You can download it for free at this web address. I think this is the New York Bee Wellness website. This is just a short URL, and you can download this PDF for free. I mean, you can purchase this book for, I've seen it for as little as $7 and as much as $20, and it's a nice little book that talks about honeybee diseases. We only talked tonight about American foul brood. We talked a little bit about land workers, and we spent a lot of time on Varroa mites. This resource covers everything else: the hive beetles, the wax moths, the European foul brood, the nosema, all the other stuff that you may not see in your beekeeping career. We just talked about the stuff that I know you're going to see: Varroa mites, land workers, and the really serious one that I hope you don't see. The incidence is very low. It's less than 1% on American foul brood, but there are other diseases that you might see, and this guide will help you understand that. It's really nice. It has text on the left-hand side. This is basically the spine of the book. So there's text on the left side and pictures of what they're talking about on the right side. It's very easy. Remember we talked about the sunken cappings? So here's the picture of the sunken cappings. And you can download it to your tablet or your phone. You can read it while you're at the doctor's office or at the DMV or waiting or whatever you want to do. It's a very handy document. Sandhill Bees. This is the personal website of an extension person in Michigan. So her name is Megan Milbrath, and she has some great articles. She has a monthly article in the American Bee Journal this year, and but she has some really good articles here under the education link. How to light a smoker, making a plan for Varroa, step-by-step guide to Varroa monitoring, working towards treatment-free, but very good resource. Check it out, sandhillbees.com. The last resource, it's an app for your phone, either Apple or Android. It's called Mite Check, and you'll find a link to this from the keepbeesalive.org website. They'll have a link to either the Apple or Android application. And so this is a good thing to have on your phone that can help you understand how to do an alcohol wash or a sugar shake, sugar roll. And so it's basically a tutorial. It'll walk you through the process and has some training guides as well. And so it can really help you understand how the process works. Also built into it are some videos, some demonstration videos, and it's a very good resource. I hope you'll take advantage of that. All right, so that's my talk for tonight. I know we covered a lot of ground, and again, we just kind of scratched the surface. I hope as new beekeepers, I hope you'll all find a mentor that can help you understand what's right and what's wrong. I hope you'll also find a bee buddy, someone that's at your same experience level that you can share your trials, tribulations, and victories with. I tell you what, my bee buddies that I leaned on and learned with as I was learning beekeeping, they are my lifelong friends. So you'll make some real good contacts and good relationships in beekeeping. Find those mentors that you enjoy working with, and those bee buddies that you enjoy working with, and it can really make a difference. So that's a presentation for tonight. I live in Rutherfordton. You can catch me. If you can call me anytime. I don't answer the phone a lot because I'm driving a lot, and so usually the phone just goes to voicemail, and I'll call you back. If I don't call you back, call me again. And sometimes things do fall through the cracks. So, but please give me the squeaky wheel. Keep calling. You can text me at this number. You can leave me a voicemail. You can also send me an email at this address, and I'll do my best. So thank you for watching. I hope we can get together for a question and answer session and fill in. I know there's a lot of blanks here, and so I hope we can get together and we can start to try to fill in some of those blanks, but definitely call on me if I can help. All right, thank you and good night.